Hello and welcome to Become the Teapot. I'm Ian.
And so am I. And this is a podcast. In this podcast, we talk about films based on comics. We also talk about those comics. That's pretty much it.
That's not entirely true. We also go off topic quite a lot.
Yeah, fair point.
This episode, we're watching The Losers.
No, Ian, that's just our Discord video chat.
The film. We're watching the film The Losers from 2010.
Oh, that makes more sense. And also explains why we've been reading the comic of the same name by Andy Diggle and Jock.
Yeah, so let's ante up, double down, and begin the show.
Okay, so The Losers 2010. I've got a bit of preamble again, as usual. The last couple of episodes since we have James on the show, we've decided to try and actually set up the film. It only took us 37 episodes to get there. So, The Losers. Hold on a second, let me just find my notes. A 2010 action movie about a crack squad of operatives framed for a crime they didn't commit. Wait, hold on a minute. That's not right. That's the summary for the A-Team. Oh, here we go. The Losers is a 2010 action movie about a crack squad of operatives framed for a crime they didn't commit. Oh, I see what's happened here. Okay, well, whatever. It's an action movie. There's a team of posturing guys and a token woman who blow up lots of stuff. Ian, what did you think?
Well, I actually enjoyed it.
Really?
I was waiting for a reaction there, but you picked the wrong time to take a sip of your drink. Yeah, I think we've cycled back to stupid, fun films, easy watching, daft, over-the-top films that I quite enjoyed it. It was quite fun. I mean, I don't think it's your kind of film, but I'm sure that you'll share your views in a second.
Oh, well.
But yeah, I've seen it before. I've actually read the comic, a few issues of the comic before, so I knew what I was getting into before we watched it. You?
Right.
So let me guess. You're going to pick the film apart piece by piece.
I don't think it requires picking apart piece by piece, quite frankly. I mean, it's rubbish. I mean, it's just pretty hollow in film, in all honesty. It's sort of chock full of movie cliches. It's okay actors, lots of recognisable people playing pretty 2D characters.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 97 minutes of explosions, so it does keep you entertained for that period. I think I read online, Quentin Tarantino apparently described this film as dumb fun. And I certainly agree with the first part of that.
It is dumb fun. It's over the top. It's a mindless summer flick. I think it is funny. I think it's trying to be over funny. We'll go on to the comics, obviously, in a bit. But I feel like in the comic, it's Jensen who's the smart-ass comedy character.
Yeah.
In the film, they've given all the characters at least one quip, if not more.
Yeah, they've really ramped up the comedy for the film, and it means that tonally it's all over the place, because the film starts with a war crime and the death of 26 children.
Yeah, which I knew was going to happen, so I was prepared for it.
Yeah.
But I think it broke Kate's heart. She was like, oh, and then he picks up that sort of on-fire bear, and she's like, oh, no.
Yeah, and then the film ends with a comedy football match with him shouting at a referee. I mean, it's just... It's all shot in the style of a Fast and Furious film. It's tonally all over the place, and it just feels really dated. I'm pretty sure it felt dated back in 2010 when it was made. It's terribly directed. It's got slow motion, shuttering, frenetic, wobbly camera work, a lot of action without actually showing any real violence. It cuts away every time someone is shot or harmed in any way, and it's all pretty nonsensical and lacking in any kind of stakes. I mean, I actually looked up the director, right? Because, I thought the direction was rubbish and I wanted to know who did it. So it's mostly TV work from what I can see, but his notable films appear to be The Losers, a film called Stomp the Yard, which is a sort of step-up song and dance film,
I guessed that by the title.
And he also did a film called I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, which is the third sequel of the I Know What You Did Last Summer franchise.
Right.
It went direct to video and has a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, Jesus.
So this is the guy they put in charge. He's also directed a lot of TV things, a lot of things you've probably watched, Umbrella Academy episodes and things like that. But, I mean, it was rubbish. It was so frenetic, jumped around so much that I didn't care about anything that was happening on screen. I just wanted it to stay still a bit longer.
Yeah, I did start writing my notes when I was watching the film, and I realised after I'd watched the film, my notes were just places that they'd been. So there was Dubai, Houston, LA, Bolivia, other places. And I realised these are more like plot points and places than they are actual notes of the film.
Yeah.
And then I had to rewrite my notes to make it a bit more conversational. And we've used the term location whiplash or whatever it was that you said ages ago.
I said narrative whiplash, but yeah.
There you go, that one. It is very much like, oh, they're here. And even there was a bit in Dubai or somewhere that it cuts to the place. You've got the bad guy Max, which I want to come on to in a second, and his sort of henchman. It's literally one scene, 2 lines, and then it cuts back to them in Houston or America. You didn't have to say where they were. Stop saying where they are. I know they've used it because that's in the comic a fair bit, but in the comic it kind of works because you kind of can't tell where they are in a drawing.
But it's not really, though, is it? I mean, they've obviously tried to replicate the comic a fair degree with the opening and things like that, where it pans to the cartoon or the comic likeness of the characters. Doesn't really work in the case of Idris Elba, but we'll come back to that. So they sort of replicate that, but the comic does generally stay for issues at a time. It will stay in one location, so you know where you are. It doesn't jump back and forth. And I get the feeling that comic book, and we'll go on to this, the comic book is a comic that is massively inspired by action films.
Yeah.
And as such, it is more action than comedy. And the film is not good action and not particularly good comedy.
Like I said, it's a dumb film, and I did find it funny at points. To be fair, I did find it funnier than a lot of comedies that I've seen, because it's an action film that's also a comedy, whereas there are a lot of films out there that are a comedy that aren't funny, and I'd rather probably watch this than a crappy comedy.
But would you not rather watch a good comedy than this?
Yeah. Well, yeah, if I had a choice between like a crappy comedy or this, I'd probably watch this.
And would you not rather watch a good action film than this?
Well, I do own this one on disc, and I think I've watched it in total about twice. As in, this is the second time I've watched it, maybe the third time.
Right.
But, you know, that was since 2010, so 2 to 3 times in the last 12 years.
Yeah, once every 5 years is not.
Shows how much that I've gone back to it.
Yeah, I think I've seen it before, but when watching it again, I could not remember half of this film. And to be honest, I was half tempted to watch it again this morning to remind myself. I only watched it on Thursday, but I can't remember much about it. I mean, I did anticipate this defence of the film, you know, so I have written in my notes here, I know what people are going to say, don't overthink it, it's dumb fun. Right, I've said about this before, turn your brain off, popcorn flicks, whatever it is, it's a bullshit excuse for crappy films, right? There are good action films and there are bad action films. We cover plenty of films on this podcast, pretty much all of them being comic book films that don't require any sort of higher brain function whatsoever.
Yeah.
And they are by and large better than this film.
Yeah.
Turn your brain off is not an excuse to make a crap action film, you know, even if we just compare it to the similar films that we've covered. So taking the superheroics out of the equation.
Yeah.
Well, last one probably would have been Die Hard. Well, it's definitely no Die Hard, but few films are, so let's discount that. So 30 Days of Night and The Old Guard, I would say, were kind of action non-superheroes.
Yeah, I would lean towards The Old Guard more than others that we've covered.
Yes.
But comparing it to Old Guard is not a good thing.
Well, no.
That's not a compliment.
It's not a compliment, and I actually think it's worse than The Old Guard. You know, neither of us particularly cared for that.
Really?
Yeah, I think this is much worse. You know, the one thing this has over The Old Guard is that it's only sort of 90 minutes long as opposed to 2 hours. Yeah. But being mercifully short is not a ringing endorsement for a film.
I do feel like there was a certain scene, and it's not because one of the actors is also in this film, but there's a bus scene in Houston when Pooch makes Clay, and I call him Rogue. It's not. It's Rogue. There you go. But I've been calling him Rogue, so I'm going to keep calling him Rogue. So Pooch makes Clay and Rogue apologise to each other. And that scene reminded me a lot of the new Suicide Squad film.
Right.
Just the interaction of these dumb characters that are interacting with each other and they're not friends. It made me think that I feel like this film came out too early. If it came out nowadays, I don't think it would be as short. I don't think it would be as dumb. But I reckon that they could turn it into something more. Because, I mean, yes, we've had, 20 years now of every other film in the cinema is about superheroes. Where, like, if you get someone, I'm not saying James Gunn, but someone like him to bring this to the screen, I think it could work. And the humour and the action could pair up really well. I think it came out too soon, and like we said, it's not a great film. You would say it's not even
a good film.
But I just feel like I think there's more that can be done with this than what was done with it, if that makes sense.
I think you're probably right. I think there's more that could be done with the original comic than was done. I mean, it doesn't deviate that much from the comic book, but I just find tonally it's all over the place and it's not particularly well directed or written. So you're probably right. It could have more done with it, but also because the comic book is inspired by action films, it feels very derivative of other action films in the comic, but obviously it's a different medium.
Yeah.
So when you then translate that back into a film, it is just another action film. It's just another generic, it might as well be the A-Team.
Yeah, which actually, that came out the same year.
Exactly.
And about 2 months after. And this happens a lot in Hollywood. The same year, sometimes the same month, the same film comes out. You know, you said about Ants or A Bug Life.
Yes.
Or something ages ago. It's the same film. Came out like...
It's not quite the same film, but it's strange that there are two ant-based animation films coming out at the same time. And it does happen a lot, you're right. Yeah. There's 3 Pinocchio films currently in production, due to come out next year.
Probably won't watch any of them, but...
the Guillermo del Toro one should be promising, hopefully. That'll be coming on Netflix.
Like I said in the intro, we do deviate a lot. But yeah, you did a little bit of your preamble about the plot. Should we just run through the characters real quick? Because I do want to sort of touch on the bad guy in this as well.
Yep.
But yeah, you've got Clay, who's the leader.
Yep, that's his personality.
Pretty much, that's it.
Yep.
He's the leader. He's a bit grumpy, but he's fine. Played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan. So not his first superhero film, or not his only superhero film.
Not his only superhero film.
Watchmen,
Yep.
the comedian.
And he's also in other comic book TV programs. He's Negan in The Walking Dead. So
Yes, which I've not yet gone back to. I still have not gone back to that show.
Don't blame you.
Yeah, so he's the leader. You've then got, as I call him, Rogue, which is the number 2, Idris Elba.
Yep.
He's the demo and the tactical guy. So
Was he?
apparently that's what it said on the start of it. I wrote down what it said. I paused it and wrote it all down. So Clay was the operational control.
Right.
Again, I'm going to call him Rogue. Was the demo and tactical guy.
Okay. But his main thing he did was use knives, like demolitions do.
Yeah, I don't know. He was the number 2, but he was grumpy as hell and didn't like taking orders, which is not what you want in a number 2.
Ideally not, no.
I thought he was kind of like Raphael in the Turtles.
Yeah.
Just that sort of arsehole character that everyone loves.
Yeah, Wolverine.
Oh, Wolverine. There you go. You then got Cougar, which is the long-range eliminations.
Yep.
It just means
Sniper. Basically, I kind of feel like you could have just had him and Chris Evans, and that would have been good enough, because they seem to do everything in this film.
Yeah. And then, you got Chris Evans, who is Jensen. Comms and tech. That was his thing.
Yeah, comms, tech, and parkour, it should say, for some reason.
Yeah, I know you've not really watched it, but in The Office, they go, parkour, for a full episode. So we just kept shouting parkour at the screen. And you got Pooch, who is the transport and heavy weapons.
Yes, again, mainly transport. He drove the van.
Yeah.
Is his job. And so, when they were doing that bit at the end, where they're like, you can go home to your wife, do what you want. But he was like, you need me. What, to drive the van and then get shot in the legs? That's all he does. We've already proved that some of the other people on this team can drive. Yeah. You could have gone home, quite frankly.
So that's the losers. Like you said, you've got Zoe Saldana's character. I didn't even write her name down.
Well, this is...
Aisha?
Yeah, this is a thing. Her name, because in the comic book, she is obviously a Middle Eastern character and a warrior from Afghanistan. And so her name is Aisha Al-Fadil. And I don't think they changed it for the film.
Yeah, actually, good point. Didn't realise.
But they made her from Bolivia instead.
Yeah.
So I don't know quite how I feel about that, but yeah, she's also there.
I mean, I do quite like, it's not the I'm a damsel in distress, I have to be saved. She can hold her own. She can fight and, she's a pretty strong female character. But... she's not the best character in the world.
That could be said for all of these characters. They all have the same skill set. They're all badasses. They all can fight and shoot and run and jump and everything that everyone else can. This is why you said, these job roles, apart from maybe the sniper, all of their job roles are massively interchangeable. They all do the same things.
Yeah.
And none of them have much of a personality beyond that.
Yeah, so that's the sort of good guys, I guess. And then the bad guy, Max.
Yes.
I've literally just put down, because he didn't have a little pop-up screen. He didn't tell me who this person was, so I had to put it up myself.
And he actually wasn't in the comic books. So.
Well, yeah. And I've put the cliche evil bad guy, evil being in air quotes.
Inverted commas.
Yeah. Inverted commas, thank you. He was evil for the sake of being evil.
Oh, yeah.
And that was about it.
Yeah, he was ridiculously over the top. And I almost admire that they just went, yeah, fuck it. Let's make him racist. Let's make him sexist. Let's make him the most annoyingly evil, unnecessarily evil person, just who murders people left, right, and centre for no apparent reason.
Yeah, there was the bit on the beach when the lady's holding up the umbrella because he didn't want to get a suntan.
Yeah.
I don't know. And the wind blows it slightly, and he just gets a gun and shoots it. And then she falls over, holding the umbrella.
Yeah, off camera, she falls over, getting shot.
Oh, yeah, off camera, yeah.
Because he can't show any violence.
He didn't like the sun, so he killed her, and he was in the sun more than he would have been if he... I don't know. But yeah, I think, just said about the being shot off camera, I'm not too sure what the production company was called, but this is their first film that wasn't R-rated.
Right, okay.
Might explain... Well, it doesn't explain it. It doesn't explain that at all.
It doesn't explain anything, no.
There's a fact for you.
It's like they filmed it like it was R-rated, then realised that they had made a mistake and just had to cut out all the actual bits of violence, which would explain why it jumps around so much, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I do like Chris Evans in this film. I like Chris Evans' earlier roles. I like that he's the comedy character, like, you know, the Human Torch and the Fantastic Four films. I'm glad that he moved away from it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that he's not just that character for the rest of his career. But it works in his earlier films.
Well, actually, this came out the year before Captain America.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
that's pretty impressive, actually.
This would have been in the middle of, well, after Fantastic Four for Captain America.
Yes, well, Fantastic Four 2 that we covered, I think, was 2007. This was 2010, and then the first Avenger was 2011. So, yeah, no, I actually, it almost makes his transformation in that film more impressive.
Yeah.
It doesn't do much for this film, but yeah, he's all right as the comic relief, again, quote unquote, comic relief.
Yeah, but I do love the don't stop believing telekinetic shootout bit. I just find that hilarious. And then it was obviously in the comic as well, which I thought was, that to me was quite funny. And just put yourself in the shoes of the guards thinking, what the hell's happening? Like, how is this guy shooting me?
Yeah.
I thought it was funny anyway. You probably...
I would have gone, oh, I bet there's a sniper in that building opposite. Before jumping to the conclusion that he was actually a telekinetic, yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's clearly a reason behind it, which we do see. But I just think, you know, just for a split second, you're probably like, what the hell's happening?
Yeah.
Sniper. Right. Okay. I got it.
So let's talk about towards the ending then, and before we go on to the comic book. Obviously, Idris Elba betrays the team, so he ends up one of the villains.
Yeah.
And...
Oh, spoiler.
And then you also have Max as the villain. Max gets away, and they almost set up for a sequel, which is a very bold choice. Very optimistic, I felt.
Yeah.
And then there are about 3 different endings after that, where he goes to the hospital, they go to the football, there's the guy on the bus. I mean, lots of stuff happens. It felt very... I mean, the whole film wasn't particularly satisfying, but it was a particularly unsatisfying ending, I felt.
Yeah, a little bit all over the place. And I don't know how they plan to end it. I think they just chucked in a bunch of stuff and going, right, we'll clean that up when it comes to putting it together.
Yeah. Well, when they're all on the run at the beginning of the film and, like, hiding in slums, and at the end of the film, despite not clearing their names in the film... At the end of the film, they're all at a football match.
Yeah, which they even say, this is dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, we shouldn't be here. And then he runs on the field and starts shouting at a ref.
Yeah.
Which you shouldn't do.
Probably not, no.
Well, just to do a classic segue that I love doing, there's actually a...
You know it doesn't count as a segue if you say it's a segue.
Oh, yeah, no, but that's my gimmick, isn't it? That's my gimmick. Me classic long-winded segues.
Okay.
But yeah, there is a scene that was cut from the end of the film. I think it was supposed to be a post-credits, where actually you see Idris Elba talking on the phone to some guy, and it's a random character that we've not seen before, and he called himself Max.
Right.
Not the same guy as Max in the film. And that's literally the exact same way that book 1 does then finish.
Yes.
So I think that leans more into the fact that they were looking for a sequel.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, talking of the comics, should we move on?
Wow, seamless.
Segue.
Perfect. All right, well, let's go on to it. So The Losers, issues 1 to 12, for some reason, we read, by Andy Diggle and Jock. The preamble I've written for this is The Losers by Andy Diggle and Jock. We've read some of their work before when we covered Green Arrow,
Yep.
Year 1.
Year 1.
In our Arrow episode, and it's pretty much the same as the film.
Yeah.
So just go back to the preamble for the film, listen to that again, and then jump back to this. It's a bunch of CIA guys, there's betrayal, action, etc.
Yes.
What do you think?
Okay, so like I said, I have read, well, I thought I'd read the entire book, as in book 1 before. Turns out I'd only read a couple of issues. Because I got to like halfway through the book or towards the end, I was like, I don't remember reading this before, but it turns out that, because I do own them as well, so I own book 1 and 2. For some reason, I watched the film and I was urged to go out and buy the comics.
You really did like it, yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess, and then, well, clearly not.
And the DVD as well.
Oh, yeah. I didn't finish the book, so I didn't like it that much, apparently. But no, the reason that I said to you about doing both the books is because I knew the book 1, the majority of it sums up the film, but in a different order.
Yes.
And then from what I'd seen online, book 2 is all about the loser trying to hunt down Max. So I thought, oh, okay, there's probably bits in book 2 that they put in the film. But no, they didn't. They didn't at all.
No,
Nothing at all.
there's not.
Nothing to do with it.
No, the entire film seems to be based on the first 6 issues of this comic.
Yeah.
Which, considering I think there's 36 issues overall.
Yeah.
So we've read the first 12. So we've read about a third of the story.
There's 5 books, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this happens quite often with comic books, is that they will, if it's intended for an ongoing run, a longer run, they will try and do a complete story in the first 6 issues, because that's quite often the cancellation era. So basically, if you get cancelled after the first few issues of the comic books, it's not selling enough, you usually have time to wrap up the first 6 issues before it gets cancelled.
Yeah.
So often they'll tell a complete story in that first run, and you can then package it as a limited series or something.
Yeah.
Obviously that didn't happen here, but the first 6 issues is a fairly self-contained storyline. Moves at a fairly breakneck pace. You don't really get to know Roke before he betrays them.
That explains why my neck hurts.
Funny. Good stuff. So what did you think of it, though, having read now the first 12 issues?
I actually really enjoyed it. Like we've said, it's, bit in the words of the writer, Andy, he said the comic is a love letter to Shane Black's action films.
Yeah.
Kind of what you said earlier on. And I actually quite enjoyed it, because they're not all the comedy characters. That's maybe 1, potentially 2 of them. It doesn't take itself too seriously. I think the film leaned into that far too much. Yeah. Where the comic does use the balance of action and comedy quite well, but it's not over the top.
Yeah.
The action is, but the comedy's not.
I hadn't actually heard that quote before. That's quite interesting, because, in my notes, it is a comic that clearly takes heavy inspiration from action movies, and it really relishes in the trappings of the genre. So there's so much goes into this comic book that is stock action film sequences.
It does read like a film.
Yeah. And as I said, the problem with that is then when you then translate that back into a film, it becomes just another action film, especially in the hands of a less experienced or a journeyman director. If you gave this to Shane Black, it could be another classic action film.
Yeah, she's saying that with that quote, like, go to Shane Black and go, can you help us?
Well,
help us turn this into screen.
I'm not sure that's how Hollywood works. I'll be honest with you.
No, I'm pretty sure it is. If I called up Shane Black, fine.
Or James Gunn, whoever you wanted, they're probably going to be free to do your film at any moment.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But it is funny how the medium that you're working in can affect your enjoyment of something, because the comic had the same characters, more or less the same plot, the same light-hearted, action-heavy tone, as you say. And while it's not going to make my top 10 list of favourite comics or anything, I did enjoy this more than the film. It's quite
good.
It's good fun. It's light, throwaway, fluff action film or action comic. I think it really hits its stride after a little while. Once it gets the character work out of the way, you get to know them. It becomes a lot of explosions and a lot of guns flying around. And I would potentially be looking to finish it, but I'm not sure that would be straight away. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's like a 5-book run, 32, 36 issues, whatever it is. So, it's not like you're going into something like The Walking Dead that's like, what's that, 130 odd issues or something stupid.
196.
Yeah. It's the same with me with The Walking Dead. I am interested to read that and try to finish it. But kind of like when you start something, you're like, oh, how many seasons is this? 20. Oh, good. Like, fantastic. I've now got to watch 20
It's
seasons.
daunting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Going into something that's been on like that for so long already. Yeah.
Well, we've obviously spoken about Andy's work, and Andy and Jock, they've worked together on a fair few things before, like we said, year 1. But I've got some, it's not really preamble because we're already in the amble, but some in the middle amble, I guess.
Just amble?
Amble. So Andy read 2000 AD and got hooked. He then actually went on to work on that for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And that's when Jock started sending in his artwork. So the two of them paired up and they started this comic almost. And then they were told to turn it into a series. So Andy had planned it to be a 2 to 3 year run. and he knew where it was going, which is quite nice when a creator has that last issue or final point in mind, because you can kind of work towards it.
Yeah.
Unlike things like Lost, where I think they had no idea where they were going with it. But yeah, and this was their first big American comic that they worked on.
Yeah.
I mean, as we said just before we came on air, they are both English artists, and well, I know Andy is English.
I think they're both British, yeah.
Well, yeah. So yeah, like I said, it was written with this American film style way of storytelling. And then Andy did a lot of research into his evil guy, so Max, and he actually looked into the history of the CIA.
Yeah.
And he read books by Robert Bayer, an ex-CIA agent. See No Evil was a big influence for the character of Max, which Max, he's not really in. I think his eyes show up in a couple of panels, and he's on the phone at one point, and that's about it. Max is the character that was changed the most for the films.
Yes.
So in the comic, he's very political. He's an ultra neo-conservative, where in the film he's not. He's just a bad guy.
He's just a comedy villain. Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that we did read the second book, because it was good to expand the world, and it wouldn't just be, wow, the first 6 issues is the film, there you are, done. I've not read past book 2, but they go into a lot of information about Max, and it explains the story, explains the world and everything like that.
Yeah.
Where in the film they brought him in far too early, but you kind of need to for a revenge kind of film.
Yeah, I kind of feel like you could have done it with just the henchman character that was in the film and then the betrayal of Roke, like the comic was.
Yeah.
You could have had the mysterious person on the other end of the phone. I mean, that's what films like the Bourne trilogy, for instance, that's what that did, you know. If Jason Bourne had figured out what was going on in the first film and solved everything, it wouldn't have been quite so interesting.
Yeah.
I still don't understand how Max got away at the end of the film, by the way. He was on top of a container unit. They shot him in the arm, jumped off the water, and then they all just let him go away and get on a bus, apparently.
Yeah, that other guy jumps in the water, gets the bomb thing. Not the bomb, the detonator. Yeah, and you would have thought that he would have been like, oh, someone, go and get him.
Well, presumably he had to then climb down all of that massive thing that he was on. So, I mean, someone would have been at the bottom by the time he got down there. And also, there was just a bus passing by that. Anyway, let's get back to the comic.
But yeah, no, I do think that you are right in saying that a lot of these characters are a 2D character, and Max, I think, is the flattest character of them all.
Yeah.
So he's bad for bad sake, and I don't think that's like it in the comic, but I think I will read more at some point, and I'm interested to see where they take the character of Mac, especially to know that Andy did a lot of research into actual CIA kind of work. Which you do kind of see that in book 2 as well, with a bunch of like the CIA agents.
Yeah.
Soon they're in the CIA headquarters because they're in Langley, Virginia.
Yeah. The Pentagon or whatever. Or Langley. I don't know if that's the same thing. Yeah, Max is certainly more of a mysterious figure in the comic books. He's an overarching villain as opposed to just this sort of... If this character had been killed off in the first one, they had revealed someone else to be Max. I wouldn't have been sorry for that if there was someone above him, because I just found him a bit annoying. But yeah, there's certainly more going on with the comics with regards to the mystery underlining the whole thing.
Yeah.
But what did you think of the art? So Jock's art. We talked about Jock and Andy Diggle working together for the first time. But what did you think about it?
Yeah, I actually really liked it. It was different, and I mean, I know that I didn't read it when it first came out, but a lot of the stuff I read about the reaction, I guess, to his artwork is that it wasn't the usual artwork back then. It is quite scrappy, and like there's panels where it's just people's eyes, but you kind of get like 2 panels which are quite long panels of just the eyes on like one side of the page. It is scrappy, but it is good in a way. I think with year 1 that we covered, it's not as scrappy as the Losers, so I like the Losers artwork more than I like the year 1 artwork.
See, I had the same problem with year 1, which I can't remember if we said in the episode or not, but my same problem I had with that, I had with this as well, is that I think it's actually the colouring rather than the art itself. I think Jock's character work is very good. All of the characters and the action is really good, but the backgrounds are just lacking in any kind of detail. And quite often you will have a white background or a sort of gradient colour background, sort of lightly fuzzed over.
Yeah.
And they're just sort of these characters stood in front of it. Now, it's interesting that he comes from a background of something like 2000 AD, which historically was black and white. It's been published in colour for a little while now, but I went out of my way to find some black and white art from the Losers online. Just quick Google search and had a look at it.
Yeah.
And I actually prefer that. It works a lot better without the colour, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, that would give it a little bit more of a noir kind of tone to it, and I think That would add, I guess, to the mystery of who the bad guy is.
Yeah, but I think it would definitely change the tone of it because obviously, as you say, it's meant to be an action film. It's meant to be inspired by action films, which are obviously big, bold, brass colours. But I just find that some of the artwork gets lost amongst very plain backgrounds when you add the colour. So,
Yeah.
and I think perhaps that was worse in Green Arrow. I don't know. They obviously had different colours on those things. But I like the character work. I like the art, but I just did find that some of it was a bit plain to look at the backgrounds.
Yeah, what was the one that we did a while ago? Was it The League? When a lot of the background characters are so well detailed, and then you compare it to something like this, when it's just like a blur of faces. Like, oh, all right.
Yeah, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen he would take inspiration from crowds and he would draw each person. Each person was individual. A lot of the modern ones, they had lots of like pop culture figures in the crowds and stuff, just little Easter eggs. Whereas this, the backgrounds are almost completely empty. But speaking of Easter eggs,
I mean, just like Jensen says, a giant vibrating Easter egg from hell.
Wow. Let's move on to your giant vibrating Easter egg from hell then. Iain's egg hunt. Iain's egg hunt. Iain's egg hunt.
I'm not yoking you. Right, so, I mean, I built that up so much, and you know what? It's mostly foreshadowing, and then it's Easter eggs.
Brilliant. Okay. Was there a quote about foreshadowing in the film at all?
No, I don't think there was, unless I missed it.
Okay. Yeah, maybe near the beginning.
Yeah, probably. But no, something that I realised is that the dolls that both Cougar and Jensen were making in Bolivia can actually be seen in a shop in LA towards the end of the film.
Yes.
Nice little thing. And Pooch earlier on says there isn't anything that can't be fixed with duct tape. And then later on in the film, he throws it to Clay so he can tape up the bomb device.
The detonator.
There you go, that one. And also, Jensen says that he would spend the money on a massive yellow Hummer.
Yeah.
And that's the car that Pooch finds at the end of the film. And someone even says, hey, look what Pooch found. Well, winky wink.
Winky wink. Yeah, there was no in-universe reason for that happening, though, was there? That was just...
No.
Right, okay.
Just a comment that it was said earlier.
A really specific comment that then came true.
Yeah. A bit odd, but there you go. And the fight scene. So when Clay and Aisha first fight, the room catches fire. And this wasn't done by CGI. It was done for realsies.
Wow.
I'm bringing it back, baby.
You keep saying you're bringing it back, and then you forget to do it.
Yeah, I know. I should have done it last week or last episode when they did the opening plane crash for realsies.
They did, yeah.
But actually, no. Right, to bring it back to my Easter eggs, there actually is an Easter egg in the film.
Oh.
But it spoils the comic. And not the comic that we've read.
Oh, right, okay.
So I don't want to spoil it for you. I don't want to spoil it for the listeners. But I will say that the egg that's in the film is Max can be seen either wearing a black glove or a white glove.
Yes.
And this was done on purpose. But I don't want to say why because it's, for anyone who wants to read the comic, there is one in there that I don't want to explain. There you go. People want to go and have a little look up why I don't want to spoil the comic. Go and spoil it yourself.
Okay. So you basically had some foreshadowing and then an Easter egg that you wouldn't tell us that essentially boils down to he had a white glove or a black glove on.
Yes.
Good. Right. A new low. So let's wrap things up. Let's go back to the conclusion. Iain, what did you think of the film and the comic book in general?
As a whole, I think it's the saying that you hate, but I think it is, a turn off your brain kind of film. It's, I think it's worth a watch. It's a funny action film that's based on a comic. If people like me want to go out there and watch comic book films, I would recommend this. It's only an hour and a half long. It's not exactly a long film, but I'd say it's a funny action film. Yes, there's ones out there that are more enjoyable, that probably would fill the time more than this one. But I enjoyed it overall.
Okay.
Your take on the film?
I think even as an action film, it's pretty rubbish. I think if it's on TV and you can't find anything else to watch, you can't find the remote, your arms and legs have been broken, and your eyes are propped open with matchsticks, then I guess I can see a point in watching it. But yeah, I mean, it'll pass an hour and a half. There's some one-liners and explosions, but I certainly would not recommend it, is all I'll say.
I do like the cast as well. It's got a great cast, but they don't do much really. That's the annoying thing.
Yeah. They're all playing 2D cardboard cutout characters, so they could be played by anyone. This could be an extended pilot for a TV show, quite frankly.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if years to come they do a TV adaptation of this.
I don't think there's a demand.
I demand it.
Well, that's one. I'm sure Andy Diggle and Jock will be behind it as well, because they probably get paid.
That's 3. There
we go. Look at that.
And Shane Black, that's 4.
But again, Shane Black not involved. Not involved. So, the comic book, what did you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier on, I really enjoyed it. I actually preferred it over the film. I'm sure you did as well, because you didn't think much of the film. And I will at some point go back to read the last 3 books. I'm interested to see where they go with it. Like that, I do know a bit about the bad guy and what happens, but I don't know how they get there or like what they go through to get to that point.
The journey.
The journey. I want to see their journey. Yourself with the comic book?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say read the comic book over the film by far. I mean, there's still a lot of better comic books to read, but it was very generally enjoyable. If you're a fan of Green Arrow Year One or that sort of action-heavy, light comic book, then yeah, I would say check it out. If you're not, probably don't bother.
Yeah, fair enough.
And what was Kate's opinion of the film?
So Kate had a very quick opinion of the film, like always, but she said, "I'm glad the nodding dog survived."
Right, yeah.
That was it.
That's fair
The
enough.
little dog on his dashboard,
Yeah.
that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Probably about as much as this film deserves. Okay.
That's the new tagline of this film.
So that's The Losers. Let us know your thoughts if you've read or watched it at home. But do you have any other business for this week?
Yeah, I thought we could go back to the old classic. What have you been up to lately?
Hey, why battle? Okay, right. Well, do you want to go first or shall I?
I will go first, I think.
Okie dokie.
Because I'm hoping that John will be excited to know that I have been re-watching Supernatural.
Oh, right.
I'm almost at the end of season 2, and just so John is aware, I will be going past season 5. As he said, the first 5 seasons, aka the seasons that are worth watching. I had previously got up to the end of season 9, I think it was.
Yeah.
It recently came on Amazon Prime, so I went to rewatch it.
Well, careful now. I don't want to upset the Supernatural fans again. I mean, I've not watched it. I'm not going to cast shade on
Well,
it.
I am a fan.
You are a fan. Okay, well, that's good. But you didn't watch beyond Series 9.
Oh, yeah, that was years ago. But yeah, so just sort of keeping it on topic, because Jeffrey Dean Morgan is the Winchester father in that one.
It is, yeah. I remember reading that. I know that.
Upper Winchester.
I've never watched it, but
Well,
yeah.
that's a lie, because you said on John's episode on Persepolis that you'd watched a couple of episodes here and there.
All right. Well, okay. Yeah, I mean, if they've been on, I've never watched it for any sustained period of time. And that's another thing that's like, it's like 16 series of something.
Yeah, it's 15. So the 15th is the last season.
Yeah.
It wrapped in 2020.
I'm never going to watch that program. It's what I'll tell you now. Yeah.
I doubt you would, no. Especially with your reaction to Arrow. I think it's very much in the same vein.
Right.
I might have even said that in the Arrow episode that we did. But I am excited to watch the Scooby-Doo episode, which I haven't seen before. I'm not sure which seasons it's in it, actually, but I'm pretty sure Sam and Dean get sucked into the TV and become a cartoon, and they join the Scooby Gang. Oh, no, wait, sorry, the Scooby Gang was in Buffy. Mystery Inc. There you go.
Wow.
So there's mostly entire episode of them being cartoons with the Scooby Gang.
Okay. Wow.
I don't know why. I don't know what causes that. I'm assuming a demon of sorts.
Well, it's like when TV series have the inevitable episode where someone becomes a puppet or something. It's always just like, well, we need to mix things up here. Let's do a cartoon episode or a puppet episode or...
Exactly, yeah. But,
yeah.
Also a little shout out to your friend John.
To my friend John, yes.
I was going to say our friend, but I've never actually met him. So,
You've never met him. Although he did give us a recommendation on his podcast the other day, which was very nice of him.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I spoke to him on Twitter before. He seems like an all right guy, I guess.
He's a very nice guy. He's a very good guy.
Yeah.
If you are listening and you want to check out a podcast on sci-fi and sci-fi fandom, you should check out the Octothorpe cast.
I'm glad that you said sci-fi, because I have been catching up on the 3rd and final season of Final Space, a cartoon on Netflix.
Right.
If you like sort of sci-fi cartoons such as Futurama, I would recommend it. There's a lot of voice actors that you'll probably hear and go, I recognise that guy, probably from Futurama, probably from a lot of stuff.
Yep.
And the evil guy in it is played by my favourite, David Tennant.
Oh, yeah, you do like David Tennant.
But he's got such a weird, low voice that I can't hear it. You've got to listen really, really carefully to know it was him.
He does a lot of voice work, David Tennant, now, doesn't he? Because he was Scrooge McDuck in DuckTales, which is really good. Mm-hmm. He's also just been in, which actually is, I should have added this to my list, The Legend of Vox Machina on Amazon, which is a sort of a cartoon based on a D&D podcast called Critical Role, and he's one of the voice actors in that.
Oh, there you go. I might have to check that out.
Sam Riegel was the voice director on DuckTales, so presumably they know each other from that.
Woo.
Yep, that's the one.
And that's roughly what I've been up to lately. Well, I went to a wedding on Thursday. Anyway, what have you been up to?
We can't really promote going to that wedding that you went to.
No.
Okay, well, I've been up to quite a few things. Films, I've been watching a lot of the Oscar contenders again, because obviously we're at that sort of season. So I watched The Power of the Dog and things like that. There's some
That's on my list.
very good stuff in there. Not a cheerful film, but I enjoyed it, I think. I mean, at the cinema, though, they're doing a Studio Ghibli season at Harbour Lights Picture House. Ooh. So I've been to a couple of them. So far, we've seen Laputa, Castle in the Sky, and My Neighbor Totoro again. We will definitely be going to see some more of those. We love a Ghibli. We've seen them all before, but it's nice seeing them on the big screen. I'm probably not going to be able to say anything new about how good they are. They are very good. They are very uplifting, sometimes heartbreaking, but always enjoyable. I love a Ghibli.
I don't think I've seen that many of them. Is it the Neighbor Totoro one, which is the cat bus?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I've seen that one. And that might be it. I might have just seen one.
Well, if you want to go to Harbour Light Cinema and watch some more, feel free. As long as you're happy watching them in Japanese with subs.
I don't mind that. I've not actually watched a subbed film in ages. Randomly, one of my favourite subbed films, or two of my favourite subbed films, is City of God and The Hain as well.
Oh, a couple of crackers, yeah. Yeah, French and Brazilian.
I think we covered them in film in college years ago. And
we did, yeah.
I've got them on my shelf as well, so very easy just popping it on. But again, it's one of those films that you can't really play on your phone whilst watching because you've got to read.
I kind of feel like you shouldn't. I mean, my general opinion is don't watch films while you're doing other things anyway.
Well, yeah, it's true. And unless it's The Losers.
Yeah. What else have I been doing? Well, speaking of doing other things, I drive a lot, so I do listen to a lot of audiobooks. I've just finished the most recent Star Wars book, The High Republic, The Fallen Star. It's the third in a sort of loose trilogy about disaster movie type thing. It's all right. I've not really got into the High Republic era so far, but I like the writer, Claudia Gray, and it was all right. It was probably the best of that little trilogy thing.
Speaking of Star Wars,
yes,
have you watched the Book of Thingy yet?
The Book of Boba Fett.
That one.
I have, yes. It was okay.
I've not started it yet. I think I was waiting for all of it to come out, and then I think once I watched an episode or two, I'll probably just watch all of it.
Yeah.
But I've not started it yet, so I'm a little bit like, it took me a while to get into The Mandalorian, but once I was into it, I thought that was great.
Have you watched all of The Mandalorian now?
Yes, I watched all of it.
Okay, so now it is safe to go on to Boba Fett. I thought it was quite good fun. I mean, Star Wars can be lighthearted. It can be multiple different things. It can be just stupid action. But there were certainly some bits that didn't feel essential in any way. It felt quite like a filler arc in Clone Wars or something.
Like a cash grab almost?
Not really a cash grab. I get the feeling that there's some sort of artistic merit behind it. Someone obviously wanted to make this show, but you know, it could have been an arc of a wider story or something like that. It didn't feel like it had a proper beginning, middle, and an end. It just felt like something happened, and then you sort of come away from it going, oh, okay, well, I've learned nothing, I've gained nothing, but I found it quite enjoyable going along for the ride.
Okay.
There's some silly action bits. That's quite fun, and that's what what often you want from Star Wars.
Yeah. Anyway, continue.
So after that, audiobook-wise, I've moved on to the Orwell collection, narrated by Stephen Fry.
Nice.
Just finished Animal Farm, and I'm starting 1984. And despite their notoriety, I've never actually read them before. So I find that audiobooks like this are quite a nice way of filling those holes in your reading or listening knowledge.
Yeah.
So that's quite fun. And then in terms of books, I have just started, and by just, I mean literally, I've just read the preface so far. A book called You've Got Red on You, How Shaun of the Dead Was Brought to Life by Clark Collis. As you may have guessed, it's a book about the making of Shaun of the Dead, which is one of my favourite films. So, bit early to give a critique on that one yet, but liking what I've got so far, it's a nice quality book as well.
I think we should do a film night soon of the of those three films, which is called
The Cornetto Trilogy.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah, I've not watched them in so long. I saw a bit of Hot Fuzz the other day. I think it was on TV. Turned it over and it was halfway through, and I was like, oh, well, I'm actually don't have time to watch this.
Yeah.
I've not watched them in ages.
For our non-UK listeners, Hot Fuzz is shown almost constantly on television. Over here, it's always on. But I watched Shaun of the Dead last year. I watched Hot Fuzz last year as well, I think. But I watch them quite often. But Shaun of the Dead's my favourite of those three.
You seen his last film, Last Night in Soho?
I watched it the other day, actually. Yeah, that's another thing I should have said. I liked it a lot. It's a very different tone of film. It still has those little Edgar Wrightisms, those whip pans, and those rule of three jokes, even though it's in a horror. These little callbacks to things. So it's horror and comedy in a way. The way you tell them, it's all about timing, and so there is a shared language there. But it's he clearly is like doing a love letter to sort of Italian Gayos, I think they're called, these sort of Italian ghost story films from the 60s. So, which we watched a few of last year because we were doing our horror movie spooky season. Exactly, yeah. So I was a bit more acquainted with that. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Not without flaws, but otherwise pretty good.
Yeah, I do want to watch that. I think it's now out of the cinema.
It is, yeah.
On something on disc.
I think you can home stream it now, but you'd have to pay, and it's on discs and stuff.
I will watch it. Probably once I've watched Supernatural, all those 15 seasons.
Right, well, maybe this time next year then.
Right, anyway, I think that's all from us.
I think it is. So that's all for this episode. Thank you once again for listening. If you wish to get in touch, you can contact us on Twitter at becometheteapot, or email, or Facebook, or Instagram, etc., etc. And if you like the show, don't forget to subscribe on your preferred listening platform. Now, we weren't planning on going back to Fox's X universe quite so soon, but with the rumours surrounding Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, we've decided instead to say no, more mutants. Join us next episode as we pay a visit to the New Mutants, and things get grisly as we tackle the Demon Bear Saga.
The Demon Bear Saga? I hardly know her.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Ah. Pooch earlier on says there isn't anything that can't be fixed with duct tape, and then later on in the film he throws it to Clay so he can tape up the so he can tape up so he can tape so he can tape up the yeah
we can tape
and then
up the detonator.
Yeah, I can't say it. And then later on in the film, Clay throws. For God's sake. And then later on in the film, he throws some to Clay so he can tape up the bomb device.
The detonator.
There you go, that one. How fun editing that.